Welcome to the podcast.
All right.
Pilates for PTs, from business to clinical. Hi y'all, my name is Stephen Dunn. I co-own Core Therapy and Pilates in Austin, Texas, and I'm the founder of Pilates for PTs. I've been a physical therapist for over 20 years, and I've been teaching Pilates and gyrotonic in my physical therapy practice for the last 15 years. In this podcast, I interview experts from all over the world so that you can learn more on how to grow your business or how to improve your clinical skills as a Pilates instructor in the physical therapy world. Thanks for listening. All right. Welcome to the podcast. Today, I have a special guest in from Georgia, Miss Karyn, or let me rephrase that, Dr. Karyn Staples. And Karyn, I want you to come on and tell us a little bit about yourself, introduce yourself to the group, and tell us what got you into physical therapy and what got you into Pilates and which came first.
Okay, well, I'm Dr. Karyn Staples. I own Pro Health Physical Therapy and Pilates Studio, which is in Peachtree City, Georgia, just south of Atlanta. I moved here 14 years ago, really to put physical therapy and Pilates together. But backtracking, my interest in physical therapy started when I was a kid. My dad's dad, so my grandfather, was hurt in a coal mining accident. So my whole life, I knew him, he was in a wheelchair the entire life, but he'd spent half of his life not in a wheelchair. And so when he was in his early 30s, he was crushed by a coal mine and got pulled out, spinal cord injury at T11. So he ended up spending 2 years in the hospital. And I just knew, I was like, why did Grandpa never walk? What was going on? But he did everything. He built himself a elevator in his house to get down to his workshop so he could still do his woodworking. He did everything. He wasn't physically driving the car, but he was driving the car. So he was great. It was great. My grandmother was able to handle things and all of that. And I started researching my sophomore year of high school careers. I was thinking, you know what, going to medical school, that's a lot of school. I do have my PhD at this point, so I did go to a lot of school, but decided, let's look at physical therapy. Had a family friend that went. So I graduated physical therapy school in 98, around the time you graduated, I believe.
That's right.
And so I looked at, looking at in the 90s, like physical therapy, this sounds like a really good career, family friendly, not necessarily long hours. I can make it what I want it. Let's look at that. So I went, and I was living in Maryland at the time. I went to high school in Maryland, and I went to Union Memorial Hospital and did some shadowing and said, yeah, this is where, this is a career I need to go. So I went to the University of Evansville, which is in Southern Indiana. And at that time, it was a 5-year master's program. So you applied partway through your sophomore year, get into physical therapy school, complete. And then so in May of 1998, they hand me 2 degrees, my bachelor's and master's. And so I start working in acute care. In acute care, doing that and kind of doing my rounds, being the generalist, and then started doing outpatient rotation. I'm like, okay, this is where I need to be. But then I had to work holidays and weekends and other things, ended up being able to join an outpatient clinic in Southern Indiana. And at that time, all the new grads started coming out with a DPT. And I'm like, oh, they might need me to go back at some point. So I started researching and talking to my professors, and I started a program that was a DSC program, a clinical doctorate, that in the midst of my schooling became credentialed for a PhD. So I was able to have my PhD in orthopedics and sports science through Rocky Mountain University of Health Professions. And in that, you had to do a practicum. And in the midst of doing physical therapy and starting my career, I wanted to do my own personal fitness. So I found Pilates. I was a gymnast as a kid, so it totally fit for my body. I found Brooke Seiler's book, The Pilates Body. It was great. I was looking at that. I'm in Southern Indiana, and one of my patients comes in and she's like, hey, there's a Pilates studio in Evansville. I'm like, with the equipment, with all of the stuff? And she's like, yeah. I'm like, who is it? So I started working with the Pilates instructor, Ali Goebel then, and she started to ask me questions about her patients or her clients. And I was like, well, wait a minute, let me think about this a little bit, because I was there for my workout and I wasn't looking at the equipment as my profession, it was for my workout. And then I started to see and research. So as my practicum for my PhD, I did my Polestar Pilates training. So I did my comprehensive teacher training to satisfy that, how many things can you kill with one stone, sort of thing, like, okay, this is going to satisfy a bunch of things. And then at that point, once I finished, my husband and I decided to relocate to Georgia, and I opened up Pro Health Physical Therapy and Pilates Studio, and been going ever since. So I started with myself, just working and cleaning the toilets, answering the phone, seeing the patients, doing the marketing, which was all new. I'd never had to do the marketing before. So move to a new area and sell yourself, right? So it started that way. And then over the years, I've had amazing people to work with me. And now I have a staff of 16 people that work with me, Pilates and PT and office personnel.
I love it. I love it. So I relate to the cleaning the toilets and, ordering the TheraBands and, putting out the fires and, everything. When we first opened, it was my wife and I together, but she had certain hours because we had a child really soon after we opened. So she kind of worked mom hours, like 9 to 2. And I was there kind of most of the time, 8 to 5, 8 to 6. And we didn't even have anybody in the front desk. And, when people came in, we just kind of popped their head around the window and said, hey, around the corner, hey, we'll be out there with you in just a second. Give us a moment. And now we probably have about 12 people that work with us. And it's been an interesting growth. And we have this team. And most of our team, and I'm going to ask you a little bit about your team in a second. Most of my team, they've been patients. And they've gone through our Pilates program and it's changed their life. And they're like, I don't want to sit anymore. I don't want to do this job that I'm doing and I hate anymore. And so they become Pilates instructors, go through our program and end up working for us to where they've been on my table. They've been in our Pilates program. They're now gone through a training to learn what's helped them. And now they're sharing it with other people. So our growth has been very organic based on when someone that's come to us and said, hey, I want to become a trainer. So with that said, tell me a little bit about how you've built that team and where these team members have come from over the years.
So it's been an interesting growth. So the very first team member that I hired actually was somebody that, again, found me, somebody that was kind of like, I like what you do. I want to be able to do this. And so they had some personal training background, but no Pilates. So we were able to start and go through training and do all of that. Then I hired somebody in the office because I learned quickly what were the things that I really enjoyed doing and what were the things I was willing to pay for. So that was something I was definitely willing to have somebody there to answer and do all of that. But then over the time for physical therapists that have joined me, they've either been former clinical students that had been on their clinical and said, I love this environment, I want to do this more. Or somebody that was relocating to the area and found what we were doing, looked at reviews, said, this is exactly the type of environment I've been wanting to be in, and being able to have them join there. Pilates teachers has been a different thing. I've had some that have been former clients that were like, you know what, I love this so much, I want to help other people. And other of them have come because they've been personal trainers that wanted to get out of the environment that they were in and be challenged differently. And they're like, I've always wanted to do this. And so being able to have that training program. So I host the Polestar Pilates Comprehensive Teacher Training Program and the lead educator for that. And that's been a great marriage to be able to have the education for the PTs that have come on board with me to go through that and give them that extra training along with the Pilates teachers that work with me.
Got it. Now, how many physical therapists are working with you currently?
So I have 2 full-time physical therapists and a physical therapist assistant that work with me. So we have 3 full-time PTs and a PTA. And then I have a clinical student currently now, another one that'll start in January. But still we still have room to grow. So we still have looking for another team member.
Got it. And as far as like how you run your therapy with your Pilates experience and with your Pilates trainer, do y'all work as a team? Do you do all of it yourself? Do you do PT only and trainers do Pilates? Tell me kind of how that breaks down in your specific facility.
So in mine, I myself am going to be a mix. Because I've been open now 14 years. I opened June of 2005. I have mixed. I know, it's like I was watching your podcast. I'm like, gosh, look at all these kind of levels. Wow. And I bought your book, by the way. I love it. I was able to flip through. I saw that on the email. So I was like, let me look at this too.
Awesome.
So there was a lot of things that listening to yours, I was like, gosh, we've had some parallel careers in different sides of the country. But for the PTs, they utilize the Pilates equipment with their patients. So there'll be times in the studio space that we'll have PT patients along with Pilates clients. And so we have a specific transition program that when patients are getting to the end of their time, they're ready to graduate from physical therapy, and we'll have a transition package for them to transition to the Pilates teacher with some information and knowing that that Pilates teacher has feedback. So the Pilates teachers will do manual techniques. We have 4 private treatment rooms, along with studio space. So I teach some of the group classes during the week because I want to keep that skill set up. And then I have clients that I've seen for 10 plus years that want to stay seeing me. And then otherwise I will see people and then I'll marriage them with another Pilates teacher, and same thing with my coworkers as well. And then there's times that the Pilates teacher will have a new client come in and the person's like, I'm just complaining about this. They'll then say, hey, why don't you schedule an appointment with the PT? And then we have that little flip going on there too.
Yeah. That happened with me this week. A girl came in and worked with one of my trainers and saw her one time, and they had a real good session, and she was real encouraged about where they were going. But everything the girl complained about, my trainer was like, this is exactly my problem. And this is what Steven helped me with. And I can help you, but if you see Steven first, he's going to do what he does. It's just going to help what I do on my end a little better. And and she was like totally receptive to it, where sometimes they're not. Sometimes they've had a bad experience with PT, or they're like coming from a PT to us for Pilates, and they're like, no, I just came from PT. I don't want to do that. And that's fine too. But that was a total situation just on Monday, brand new patient on my schedule. But I was able, then here I am looking at the information from my trainer that they've written. I'm looking at the information that my front desk, when they first called. So when she sits there on my table, I was able to say, so I see you have blah, 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 blah. And I was able to whip it all out, and I didn't have to ask her anything again. And then the questions I asked her were out of the scope of what my front desk or my Pilates instructor would have been asking her. So we jumped right into what was the information that I could help her the most with. And it was a fantastic session because she bought in because of our communication between our team. And even though my team and I didn't sit there and verbally discuss her through the chart, through our systems that we have in place, I was able to read it right there in front of her in about a minute and say, okay, and that was really great. And then a lot of times they're starting with me and moving to the trainers, but every once in a while it starts the other way. And that's a great way to show them that we're here for whatever their needs are, wherever they are in that process. And sometimes I evaluate people and I say, there's not really much I need to do. You just need to get strong. So why don't you go ahead and just start working with my trainers? So let me ask you this. Are you in a small town, like in a suburb of Atlanta? Or is it
I am. Yes, I am in a suburb. I'm about 20 minutes south of the airport. So there's about 45,000 people in Peachtree City. Okay. Our claim to fame is we have 100 miles of multi-use paths, but you can drive a golf cart in town anywhere.
Oh, gotcha.
So there's more golf carts outside the high school than there are cars. Because at 15 with their learner's permit, they can drive the golf cart. So it helps for people that are early drivers as well as older adults to be able to get around town. So in the drive-thrus, there might be a golf cart going through to get their Chick-fil-A along with the cars that are in line. So it's a nice suburb. So about 20 minutes outside. So we're considered outside the perimeter, kind of that difference there. But definitely a planned community that was planned in the 60s, and it's kind of grown from there.
Now, are you the only physical therapist in your community doing the type of work that you're doing?
Yes. When I started 14 years ago, moving down to Peachtree City, the only Pilates that existed was a few classes at gyms and then one person doing something in their home. There was no Pilates on this side of town. So over the time, I have educated some people to, open their own places, to do things from their own house, also to have other businesses that have come in, doing, teaching from a different style, a different training background. But I'm still the only physical therapist on this side of town that is doing physical therapy and Pilates. And as far as my business, we do one-on-one care. So we're with the patient one-on-one. There's not 3 patients at the same time seeing the one therapist. And I mean, there might be for a Pilates session, people paying for a duet or a trio. Sure. But in that case, they're doing that for that session, for that wellness. But PT wise, we're one-on-one seeing the patient.
Now, when you say you see these people for long term, is it more of a wellness relationship with them, and you're training them more than doing PT with them?
Correct. I'm doing wellness, and then at times I've had people I've been working with for 10 years. One lady, we've done a couple durations of physical therapy because she had a hip replacement, so she came physical therapy. Then she had to have a mastectomy due to breast cancer coming back 20 years later. So we did some physical therapy, making sure that her shoulder range of motion, tissue mobility. So we shifted. And then when she's in it, and there was a lot of it, as much her as it was me, that I was like, okay, we're ready to switch back to wellness. And she's like, yeah, we're ready to go back. So to be able to go through.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense. And with your physical therapy side of the program, do y'all accept insurance? Are y'all cash based? How are y'all set up for that?
So we accept insurance, and so there are some insurances that I'm in network with most of them.
Yep.
But on this, where I am and where everything is, and I was listening to your story as well, a few years ago, shifting away.
Yeah.
It's been a good way to be able to get people in at this point.
Yep.
So it's been something that's worked well. And there's some that I make choices business wise. So you make business decisions. If an insurance company is paying a certain rate that doesn't allow for the amount of time that you might want to give, I shorten my treatment time. So there's some people that I shorten, and we do 30-minute visits. And I'm very open and upfront with them from the get-go, so they don't feel like they're being gypped on something.
Sure.
But this is what my financial business decision needs to be.
And I started offering 30-minute sessions about 8 months after I went cash.
Okay.
And that was one of the things that actually took me to like a really steady level, because I realized I only wanted to see people for an hour, but whenever I offered them 30-minute sessions or hour sessions, I've always had more hour sessions in the week. There was 1 week in the last 4 years or 3.5 years where I had I had 21 hour sessions and 21 half-hour sessions. Okay. But usually it's like, I'll have like 25 or 28 hour sessions, and I'll have like 5 to 10 or 12 half-hour sessions. But when I did that, those extra 10 or 5 to 12 people a week doing those half-hour sessions, it really filled up my schedule, and it was something I wasn't really expecting. And someone gave me the advice to try it, and I did, and it was like, whoa. It's kind of interesting. So I've continued.
And for some patients, it works pretty well with that. If they're very compliant and you're like, okay, they can't take too much. They fatigue easily. It works out well.
And I see a lot of people for an hour up front. And then what I do, like after maybe 3 or 4 visits, I'll see them for a half hour, and then they'll go directly from working with me to the trainers. So we kind of transition that, like within the PT care. They're introduced to the trainers. They're like, and that same thing you mentioned earlier about, they know we're communicating. They know there's some sharing of the chart. And so I'll see someone for 30 minutes, do the hands-on, review the home program, progress any of the stuff to do outside of there, and then hand them over to a trainer and say, and I don't tell the trainers what to do because they're trained. I tell them what we're working on. I say, this is what we're working on. This is where we're at in the program. This is our goals. This is where we're heading towards. And they see us communicating that way. Even though stuff's written in the chart, we generally chit chat. When I hand them off, I'm like, bum, 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 bum. And they love that. And then 2 weeks later, a month later, I step out. I don't do those 30-minute sessions anymore. They just work with the trainer. That transition's nice and smooth. It saves them a lot of money when they're not seeing me. But then paying $85-$90 an hour for training isn't so overwhelming when they've been paying my fees. So it kind of, when I took insurance, people were balking on the cost of Pilates. When I'm cash, people balk on my rates some, but whenever they go from me to the Pilates, they don't balk on those rates. So it's a very interesting change and dynamic. So now let me ask you this: when you see the folks that, like the wellness folks, what do you charge? How do you don't have to tell me your price, but like what do you charge a certain price? This is my wellness rate, or do you charge the same rate as your instructors? How do you do that?
Yeah, I definitely have a higher rate than the instructor. So if somebody comes wellness, they pay a higher rate for me. That is a little less than the PT part because I've taken it. Never removes. The PT hat never goes away.
Sure.
But being able to make it worth my while, that if I'm going to take this hour away from giving it to somebody else, that it's worth my while, because they could, and I feel confident that anybody, that for the most part, any of the clients I work with could work with some of the other teachers, because I think they're great. And some of the teachers that I work with, and you might have the same thing, they're way more creative than I am. Yeah. And so I love to be able to see what they can, kind of get their clients to do in that. But you create those relationships, right? That's what our business is. It's building of relationships in multiple levels. So we build it as the PT with that patient, as a Pilates teacher, getting that client relationship. But then you come up to that owner level, and now you build these referral, but also around your community, different things. And I support lots of different community events and organizations, again, to make sure that I'm infiltrated in part of this community and I'm supporting them as well as supporting that to the clients that come in the building.
I hear that. We have children that are in middle school and elementary school, 2 boys, and we do a lot of, anytime they ask us to advertise for anything, we're like, sure. And we throw our logo on everything. And, people for over the course of years have seen our logo, but they don't necessarily know that it's my wife and I that own the business. Mm-hmm. And then one day someone will tell them, oh, you need to go talk to Steven or Cheryl about this limp you have going on or whatever. And it's never me telling them, it's someone else. And then they come ask us. And when they ask us, we start answering, well, like, yeah, we can help you. And they say, well, what tell us about your business? And I'm like, oh, it's core therapy and Pilates. And they're like, I've got like 30 shirts at my house with that logo. I'm like, yeah, that's on purpose. I don't say that, but it's like when my kids play baseball, I sponsor the team. So my name's on the back of their shirt. And over time, those moms may not come in that season, but they come in and say, yeah, you sponsored our team. And I'm like, oh, that's how I recognize you. We sat in the bleachers next to each other for a whole season. So I love those community things. And there's a ton of different types of community things. So what's been your best community outing or your best return on your time from your community investments?
Well, there's twofold. One is there's an organization that we have here called the Real Life Center, and they support families for a year, walk through that if there's something that's gone on, they walk through them. So we do a food drive every year for them. So it's really fun for clients and patients to come in and participate and just have that representing ProHealth as well going in to support that organization. So something that's not only from the team, but from the other people that come in the door. But our big things, it's kind of similar to you. My kids I have a middle schooler and an elementary school, 7th and 5th right now. And so they play soccer, they play baseball, they play basketball. If any sport, if the kid comes to me directly and asks, so I've supported local high school dance teams and volleyball, all the extra sports that aren't the big ones. Yeah. And as soon as they bring me, that kid has come in, I'm going to support them and say, okay, what do we have? And logos on the shirt. And I've had the same thing. People are like, I think I've seen your logo on that race shirt that every year that Peachtree City has. I think I've seen your logo on mile 9 every single time. I'm like, yeah, good. I'm glad, they kind of see it. But again, it's the same thing. I don't have my name in my business. So when people are like, oh yeah, they told me to talk to you, I didn't realize that was you. Now tell me more about this Pilates thing you have. Yeah. Or Pilates or, something that way. So, just to be able to get that information. And I'm on the back cover of the elementary directory for the elementary school my son and daughter used to go to, but my son goes to now. Yeah.
I love it. And I talk about that so much. And so when I work with some of my clients who are wanting to know how to build their business, it's like I live a mile from my office.
Me too.
A mile from my kids' schools. We walk to school. My community knows me and my wife as the people that walk the 2 boxers around. Our boxers go to work with us. And like people know us in the community before they know us as a business owner. And then it makes it so much easier to connect with them when I'm like, how do I know you? From church? From school? From where? Oh, your kid's in my kid's class. Oh, you're so-and-so's mom. Oh, you're a kid. So like that's the kind of relationships and conversations that we have all the time in our office because we're in this little bubble of where we live and work, and we're kind of in a small town right next to Austin. Okay. It's its own community. It's its own like city, but it's a city of like 4,000 people, 5,000 people right next to a city of 2 million. But when I say right next, like 3 miles, not 4 miles. So it's, but I like how I see the woods behind you. I kind of sitting in the woods but I'm like a stone's throw from downtown. So it's all designed on purpose so that we can really be a part of that community. And that was something we've been planning from the very, very, very get-go before we even had kids. We moved to this community where the best school district was, where there was some money that they could afford to pay for our Cheryl services. I had no idea I would ever step away from insurance. That was never in my thought process. That's just something I eventually felt like I had to do. So that's been a big part of our like strategic planning. So, well, let me ask you this. One of the big questions, I'm going to go in a totally different direction here. One of the big questions I get, because again, I help people kind of get out of the rut of what they're doing in their day-to-day grind job that they're really burned out from, and try to create new revenue sources and understand Pilates and how they can bring that into their studio and make a difference. And the number one question I get is, how do I get certified? Now, and I know you've been in the Polestar involved with Polestar for some time and are involved with certifying and training people. And some people, it's an easy answer. They live in a town that it's easy to find training. But what would be your answer for someone that was totally a PT but new to Pilates? How do I get certified? What do I do? Where do I go? What's the steps?
So there's a little bit in terminology that I want to just start with first. So in the Pilates profession, there's a lot of this terminology. What is certification? What's certified? And so you attend a course, you get a certificate of attendance. You take a test from that course, you get a certificate of completion. But in the Pilates world, what we want to try to take the term to is that you graduated from your comprehensive training, just like you graduate from college, because it is vocational training. It's a lot of money people are spending, thousands of dollars to get through the program. And then once they graduate from a comprehensive program, they can take the National Pilates Certification Program exam. And at that point, they will be considered a national certified Pilates teacher. So I'm actually serving on the Pilates Method Alliance Certification Commission Board. I'm a certification commissioner. And so that's the terminology we're trying to use so that way people understand that it's not just a certification, but how does somebody go ahead and start the process to be a comprehensively trained Pilates teacher? There's tons of programs out there. There's easier ones that start doing things more like modules where you can learn the mat, then you can learn chair, then you can learn reformer. And for some people, that's a lot easier to digest because they look at it as weekend trainings, and they can do that over years. They don't have to do it in one fell swoop. The program that I teach through Polestar is a 1 year long, basically, commitment, as I tell people. So when you start the program, you have 6 weekend training modules, and in there you have homework to do. After you finish your 6th one, then you have a comprehensive exam to take. And before you take that comprehensive exam, you have teaching hours to do and practice hours to do, and your homework is all signed off. And so that generally takes about a year. It's a year-long commitment to be able to go through all of it. If you don't live near one, there's a lot of times there's places, at least here, I have people travel from North Carolina, from Louisiana, from Michigan 1 year. Somebody traveled down from Michigan. There's places that people will travel, and I have a relationship with a hotel to give a really cheap rate and allowing people to be able to come and stay for the weekend and then be able to do their other training from there. But there's a lot of studios that offer their own training program that they go ahead and do it in-house. And the biggest thing I tell people is look to see what's required all up front. What is required in this training program? What's your time commitment? What are you paying? Is that all included? Or are they going to start adding some extra charges on? Yeah. Does it meet the certain standards? So the Pilates Method Alliance is the main professional organization for Pilates teachers. There's others that are out there, but it's a US-based professional association. They have come up with a set standard to show if a school meets that certain requirement. So there's a set kind of checklist that an instructor, potential instructor, physical therapist can go through and see, does that program meet these requirements? And in that, I'm going to go ahead and fulfill, and my funds that I'm spending for this continuing education can meet for that. I have several PTs that go through the program, and they do get continuing education credits that they can use for their license renewal. So, again, how many things can you kill with one stone? Make sure if you're doing it for a purpose.
Yeah, I love that. That was my next question about CEUs, because that makes a whole lot of sense, because PTs want to, if they're investing that money, they want to get the credits for it, and they should. So the one I took years ago did not. And then when I took the PMA exam, it was kind of reminded me of like PT school, right? I've completed my PT school, and now I need to take the boards. And the PMA exam was the boards. And that was like, okay, you got to take it, you got to pass it. It was actually easier. That was easier for me than the boards, because I liked studying for Pilates, and I liked the work. I didn't do so good on the boards. Different podcasts I did with someone this morning. they interviewed me based on me failing my boards. What happens? You can fail your boards and create a very nice career for yourself. That was the topic of that conversation earlier. But I love that answer. And again, I get asked that all the time, and people want to know what is the proper road. And we tell people in our program that we put together, we actually use Balanced Bodies manuals and follow the manuals. My wife teaches all of the coursework. I teach the anatomy work. The anatomy I actually teach is a little different than what they're going to learn, what they need to know for the exam. I say, here, this is the anatomy I'm going to teach you that I think is important. You can go study this book. That's the bicep. That's tricep. You can go study that on your own. We're going to talk about a little bit more of a more functional movement, functional anatomy, different stuff. So I teach the first weekend, and it's really not. I tell them this is not information on the PMA exam. This is just information that I think is going to help you look at the whole body differently and understand what we're trying to teach you in the system. And then Cheryl takes them through the reformer module. We've done where it would be like 1 week in reformer, the next month trap. And this year we've done it all reformer, and now we're into all the trap. So she's doing a little different this year. But it's kind of like one price. It's the whole shebang. And then at the end of it, they complete our training. They do our test out with us. And then they're ready to sit for the PMA exam. And we have the paperwork I'm not exactly sure what Cheryl does, but she gives them something that they can then go take the PMA exam. And that's been the process. And that's been something that's allowed us to, when PTs want to come work for us, that's one of the perks I can offer them. Well, I can get you trained. Like you said, not certified. I can get you to that point where you can go take your exam and actually be at a place where while you're doing your training, you can work and practice this stuff every day, and you can get hours when you're treating patients. So all of a sudden you're getting your PMA hours while you're working on patients, not necessarily having to find them and bring people in on the side. So that's been kind of our process. And again, it's the most we've had people who are local, had a few people that come in from different places. And ours is pretty small. We don't really advertise it. It's kind of like it's people that they come to us and raise their hand and say, can you train us? So we're not really like putting ads out, running a bunch of funnels and stuff to it where I do that for other stuff, but I don't do that for that. And it's pretty organic to where like right now there's 4 people in training. All 4 of them are patients of mine. That are transitioning. And so that makes it very fun and easy. And we know the people very, very well. And we have a little system where we have people when they go through their training and they become like an apprentice for us where, they've reached a certain point where we want them to start working with people. We're going to start charging for people. It's a different rate and we're paying them a different rate. But when they get to that point and start building them up, that's a fantastic transition where we bring those people into our front office. And we teach them to run the front office, answer the phone, schedule, pay, deal with the communication. And so then when people come in and pay and schedule, they get used to that person at the front desk. And then 3 months later, that person's kind of transitioning out of the front desk 6 months later into teaching more classes. Then our clients already have a relationship with that trainer who has really been working the front desk. So we have a front desk guy who's like full time. He's there 30 hours a week, but the other 20 hours or so are covered by trainers who are building their schedule. And we found that's been a really great way because it teaches them, again, how to communicate on ways that they're not really learning in their Pilates teacher training program, but they're learning choreography and work. But here we're teaching them how to get to their goals, how to get to the meat and potato, how to sell what we're trying to offer to the right people. So it's really been fun so that whenever they become full-time trainers, when they're finished the program and they become, all right, they're no longer apprentice and we're charging the normal training rate, they're very comfortable on many fronts. And that's just something we've been playing around with for the last probably 3 years of our teacher training program. Has been going on for about maybe 8 or 10. And we only do it probably every other year just based on when people raise their hand. So that's been our experience. And it's fun because we really have this long-term relationships with the trainers or the PT. Like you said, they'll come to us and they'll say, hey, I've been watching your place. I love what you're doing. I want to work here. How do I work here? I'll do the training.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, oh, you're pretty full.
It's like, hey, this is good.
Right? Come on. So I had
Yeah.
had one lady do that, and she worked for me for about 3 years. Did the training and did work for me for about 3 years, and then went and did some travel work, and got bored of driving in from where she lived, and decided, the market was strong. She went to Hawaii for a year. And
there you go.
So,
actually, I have a girl that, just as a little side note, you're talking about transition. She started working with me when she was 15 years old. She's going to be 20 in December, and she's transitioned from being the tech, cleaning the toilets and doing other things, to working at the front desk, to now she's a Pilates teacher.
So what loyalty do that's your team, right? You have such a loyal team when you build it like that. Pretty much everyone on my team, they've either come from as a client, or they've been referred to us because they've gotten trained, or they moved to town and they're trained from somewhere else, but they're looking for more of a rehab style. They're not looking for the more of the fit. And Austin is really busy with fitness Pilates. There's a ton of it, and there's not as much, very little of the rehab style of what we do. So the people that find us, they're finding us for that reason. And we just need to then say, yep, come observe, come see how we do it. And then they're like, whoa, every teacher's different. And I'm like, yeah, we let our teachers be themselves. Every teacher does something totally different. Yeah, everyone's creative. Everyone has autonomy here. You have to have a reason for what you're doing. You have to have you have to know what you're doing, and not just be doing something to do something because you saw it on Instagram yesterday, but a reason for what you're doing. And they're like, oh, this is very different than what I'm used to. And then those people end up working for us as well. We've got 2 trainers like that right now.
Nice.
We didn't train, but they're a perfect fit for our culture. And they were actually referred to us by the other people in the community, because we have a great relationship with anyone that'll have a great relationship with us in the Pilates community here, physical therapy community here, we will. Most people don't have the right mindset. They're a little bit afraid of us, but we really try to be out and open and on the same page with all those people, because we figure there's plenty of work for all of us, plenty of people for all of us. And I try to move it all forward instead of just bits and pieces. So, well, I really appreciate your time today. Some great insight. And again, I love the hammering home of the certification and the training. That's what Sherry and I talked about. That's where your name came up. That's why we're having this conversation, is your name came up when Sherry and I were talking, and I wrote it down. I'm like, I reached out to her. So thank you, Sherry, for connecting us to this.
And it's interesting that you had Christine Piton on the course that she was talking about at Emory. I'm now the professor of that course. So I wasn't at the time, because the person that she was talking about has now moved on, and she recommended me to start teaching it. So the current year students we've had 4 of our modules out of, we've got 2 more days to go. But yeah, so the class has continued. So it's hopefully Christine knows that, and the students now are getting that information.
I will pass that on to her, because she's in one of my my business groups that I'm involved with. So I love that. So the small world continues, and that's what this is about. I knew once we all sat down and started talking, and there's certain people I know and I have a really long relationship with that I'm going to bring on here and talk with. And then this is perfect. This is the first time you and I've ever had a conversation.
I know, exactly.
And it's very easy, because we have a passion for what we're doing. And all we're doing is trying to share and help people. I just want to help people continue to find a way to be passionate about being a PT, because if it weren't for Pilates, I'd have left this career a long time ago, because of the community that I've built with my Pilates studio. It's not my PT studio. It's truly my Pilates studio. So with that said, Karyn, if there's anyone that wants to reach out to you and get some more information about your trainings in Polestar, what's the best way for them to reach out and contact you?
So to contact me directly is my email, kstaples, so the letter K, then the last name Staples, STAPLES, at PH as in house, then the word rehab, REHAB, B as in boy.com. So kstaples at phrehab.com. The studio number, 770-487-1931. I have somebody answering the phone, and there's voicemail, so leave a message and they'll get it to me, and we can connect from there.
Awesome.
I'm also on Facebook and Instagram and all of that too. At ProHealth PTC is our Instagram tag.
Got it. There's so many ways now to stay in touch, right?
Yep.
Well, I really appreciate your time. I apologize about the technical difficulties of the first 5 minutes or so. I'm not good on the technical stuff. I'm much better at just having relationships and helping my people than I am at that. But I've learned it's a part of it, and I'm like, breathe. It's okay. So thanks a lot for your time. We'll get this going live. Well, I hope you enjoyed the podcast. And if you did, could you do us a favor and leave some love and write us a review? My name is Stephen Dunn. I help physical therapists incorporate Pilates into their physical therapy practice. If you would like more information on how you can incorporate Pilates into your physical therapy practice, then like my Facebook page, Pilates for PTs.